Welcome back, everyone. What's it called when you take a bunch of borrowed legends, rework them a bit, and pass them off as revelation from Allah? In this case, you get chapter 18 of the Quran, which is well known to have borrowed from Syriac sources. Narrowing our survey of Quran borrowing down to Alexander the Great specifically, there are primarily three Syriac sources that influenced the various Arabic traditions about him. The titles and dates you see come from Kevin von Blottel's 2007 article, though see also the important recent work by Tommaso Tassé for an updated assessment of some of these texts. First, the Alexander Romance has been dated to about 629, with the original Greek composition being much earlier. The Romance contains both historical and mythical accounts of Alexander's conquests. Next would be the Syriac Alexander legend. This work of Byzantine apocalyptic propaganda, say that 5 times fast, leverages the fame of Alexander as it looks forward to the end of a bitter war with the Persians. The legend describes Alexander building a large wall as a barricade against the nations of Gog and Magog, a story you'll also recognize from the Quran in, you guessed it, chapter 18. And the final important Syriac text is the Alexander Homily, the Song of Alexander or Alexander poem. This account includes additional material about the expeditions of Alexander, including his search for the Fountain of Life. Here's how part of one version of the story goes. The king and his cook were out traveling, and the cook came to water, alighted, and began to wash the salt fish. And it did not come to life in his hand. As had been said, finally he came to a fountain in which was the water of life. And he drew near to wash the fish in the water, and it came to life, and escaped. The faulty one feared lest the king would require at his hand that he should return to him the fish, which came to life without impediment. And he leapt down into the water to catch it, but he was not able. He went up from the fountain to tell the king, and so forth. Then the king rejoiced that he had heard of the fountain, and he went back to bathe in it, as he had asked. Now, you may have missed the surprising Christian overtones in this story. Tommaso Tassé comments, during late antiquity, the theme of Alexander's quest for the water of life came to be associated with Christian symbolism. Such expressions closely recall those by which the baptism ceremony is referred to in several Christian texts from late antiquity. The fountain of life is thus a baptismal symbol. As for the particular episode of the salt fish coming back to life, this might have been read as an allusion to Christ's resurrection, the fish being a very common symbol for Jesus in late antique art and literature. Now, it's very interesting that Professor Tassé notes that it's probably this Christian symbolism that explains why all things resurrection have been removed in the Talmud's version of this story. So Alexander was going along, he camped by a well to eat bread, he had in his hand salted fish, and he was washing off the salt, and as he was, a fragrance wafted. So you could tell where the waters of life, the waters flowing from the Garden of Eden, were by the scent of the water. He said, from that fact, we may conclude that the well flows from the Garden of Eden. Some say that he took some of the water and washed his face and then smelled the scent of it, and so forth. So in this version, Alexander himself has the fish is splashed with water, but there's no mention of it reviving. Alexander then followed the living water to its source, but was denied access. So clearly this is legendary material about Alexander. It's composed many centuries later, and it's adapted for different worldviews. And when we come to the Quran, which swaps out Moses for Alexander, it's no exception. Here's Surah 1860 through 64. Remember when Moses said to his young man, I shall not give up until I reach the junction of the two seas, or else I shall go on for a long time. When they reached the junction of them, they forgot their fish, for it had taken its way into the sea, swimming off. So when they had passed beyond that place, he said to his young man, Bring us our morning meal. We have indeed become weary from this journey of ours. He said, Did you see when we took refuge at the rock? Surely I forgot the fish. None other than Satan made me forget to remember it, and it took its way into the sea. An amazing thing. He said, That is what we were seeking. So they returned, retracing their footsteps. To state the obvious, the Quran is adapting the account of Alexander's search for the Fountain of Life, perhaps inadvertently including details that once served as symbols for Christ's resurrection. These stories of Alexander were mythical. They were constructed for religious and political purposes, and the Quran retells the fairy tales. What's of further interest is that many Muslim commentators have taken these fairy tales, believing they're actually history, and added even more historical details to the story on the authority of prominent Muslim figures. So in Bukhari's book of Tafsir on this passage, Moses has become arrogant because of his wisdom. So that's why Allah had to humble him by telling him about a slave who was even more knowledgeable than him. Moses could find this slave by taking a dead fish with him on a journey. When the fish came back to life, Moses had reached the destination. So read through that hadith if you like and see that Bukhari has added historical details to an event that never actually happened. Is that sahih enough for you? Tafsir al-Jalalain suggests an actual location for these events, namely where the Byzantine Sea and the Persian Sea meet. It's fascinating how they know this. The authors also give more detail on how the resurrected fish escaped. God formed a burrow and held back the flow of water, and blah, blah, blah. Ibn Kathir's commentary likewise gives us more details about an event that never happened. You can pause the screen and read that nonsense if you want. Next, Maududi tries to pin down a specific time and place for these historical events using some both ignorant and just plain stupid conjecture, which I've omitted for you. You're welcome. He continues, let's consider the question, where and when did this event take place? It may be concluded that probably this event took place during Prophet Moses' journey to Sudan, and by the confluence of the rivers is meant the site of the present city of Khartoum, where the Blue Nile and the White Nile meet together. So while many commentators apparently read this as a historical event, one wonders if research into Syriac sources explains why some modern commentators, like the authors of the Study Quran, repeatedly, in rapid succession, suggest a symbolic reading of these verses. The story of the revived fish in Surah 18 has to be read symbolically now because we know it's fiction. But does that solve the issue, given the modern Orthodox view of the Quran's revelation? We've been told it went one direction, vertically, from Allah down to Muhammad, but whoever wrote this story in Surah 18 was clearly interacting with and adapting prior legends, proof of a horizontal component to the Quran's supposed revelation. And what about Muslim scholars adding supporting details to a story that never happened? What does that say about their reliability? So many questions. And those questions multiply as we remember Surah 18 isn't the only such chapter. The Quran is replete with tales of the ancients, as its original audience recognized. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.